Review video for the meeting on the 11th of December, 2023. Fairly normal opening to the meeting until we get to the audit presentation, which is just before the public comment, first public comment. And so we'll hear from Eric, the auditor, about the audit this year. Then we get into our public comments and then our decision items. One is planning commission member renewals. So John's been on the planning commission for 3 years. I wasn't sure if he'd be interested in renewing, but he is. So he's been doing a fine job on there. Next, we have the town hall automatic door openers. We talked about this before, and so this is about these front doors out here. And we have a couple more quotes. Well, technically we have one more quote, one reworked quote with some possible additions, changes. And then one other quote. Another quote was supposed to come in. I got these packets out late last night. I was waiting for that quote to come in, but it didn't. So we have 2 in there. Maybe by the meeting we'll have a third number. Next, we have the meeting and the holiday schedule. And we talked about this last month as well, and nothing has changed on there. Next, we have new cell tower contract. So this is part of what makes the regular board packet decently thick here, because it's boring contract. So I thought about just including the contract in the reference packet, but I wanted people to read it if they wanted to, the board members, to be able to see the details of things, and see if they catch something that I didn't. I have sent it to the lawyer to give it a review in case there's any red flags or something they're trying to get over on us. Before the meeting on Monday, I should have more information on that. But basically, this was inquired into originally in mid-2020, before I took office. And then a lot of things got shut down, all the government lockdowns, and a lot of businesses put things on hold. So it's kind of a revamping of that. They've been talking to me over the last few months. I lightly mentioned it at the joint session. Wasn't sure if it was gonna come through, but now they have paperwork. So they seem serious, like they're moving forward with it, and they're giving us an offer. The initial offer, they said numbers have gone down as far as what they pay for leases and rents for cell towers and things, which you can see that. I think Starlink is planning on launching their cell tower service off of satellites in 2025. So who knows exactly what the future holds for some of these technologies, but they're still building. And so the initial offer was for $800 a month. To pay to the township for lease. This is a property in between Goose Egg Lake and Stevens Lake, so just north of Goose Egg Lake, just south of Stevens Lake. And I talked with them, seemed low to me. I talked them up to $1,000 a month. There's 1% annual increase. I tried to talk them into doing inflation or a few percent. They wouldn't budge on that number. If we do sign it before January 19th, so potentially we could get one more meeting in. If we sign it before January 19th, then there's a $4,000 bonus. There's also a $1,000 option on doing the lease with potential of paying $80,000. So the option is good for 2 years. So details in there. But to talk through that, potentially vote on it if everyone's good with it, or I can try to go back and see if I can negotiate anything else. I have already negotiated some, and then we can see it next month. So we'll see where people are on that. And I mean, it makes sense. There's most of the cell towers in the township are just on people's property, so they're private, and people collect rent for that, and that's fine. There's one other one just south of the village a little ways that's on township property. We collect rent on that, and so this would only be the second one. But makes sense to have a decent number, so there's a decent amount of service. Next, we have election precinct change. So state law changed on this. It used to be that the cap, I believe, was 3,000 for the number of people you could have in a voting precinct. So Dalton Township was divided into 4, and they raised that to 5,000, and so it can be reduced down. And Tracy wanted to kind of simplify it essentially and have 3 precincts. And that's what it is. So there's a map in there where the precincts would be, which there'd be one that's just below Riley Thompson. And then there's 2 different ones north of Riley Thompson, and that's divided up into the Whitehall and Reese Barber School District. So it's the basic idea. And then the resolution is in there for that as well. And then that would kick in the presidential primary in late February. Be the first election for that, which is going to be different because there's 9 days of in-person voting and that type of thing too. Next, we have scan and purchase. We've been talking about digitizing, it would make sense, and we just have stacks of paperwork. We literally have a room in the maintenance building called the Mouse House, which is stacks of paperwork. And before there was like a roof leak at one point before me, right? It was like roof leaks up here since where we damaged paperwork. And so before that, we had roof leaks in the back that had damaged paperwork, dealing with old lawsuits and things like that, which are still relevant. So we should still have that paperwork. And it's just a mess. I looked at probably a year ago now, somewhere around there, I looked at quoting having a company digitize it, and it is not cheap. So I had a range of quotes, but between like 35 and 50 grand, I think, for that one room, and then we have other paperwork too. And so we've been trying to digitize some stuff ourselves. Amy and Heather have been scanning in a lot of the permits and things that we'd have internally to reference. And then I've been working on board packets. We have a decent number of meeting minutes up on the website. So if you go to Municode or you go to our website and you look at things on there, you can see a ton of old meeting minutes, meeting packets, and things like that, right? So a lot of documentation that's publicly available, and then also a lot easier to search internally. So if I'm trying to find out what the township did in the past on a certain issue, I can now search it on the computer instead of looking through a bunch of books. And I've looked through a bunch of books physically, going back into the 80s to try to find stuff about the sewer and whatnot. A lot easier to search it on the computer though. I can't find the board packets for the years immediately preceding me, those 4 years. I'm hoping they're somewhere in the Mouse House still, so I'm working on finding those. But I have a lot of years, and so we're working on that. But we can't scan like bigger stuff, so building plans and some of the zoning stuff. And then we were looking at that. Right now, our zoning administrator, Steve, will run like the UPS store if he has to do something with that. But we're looking at getting a larger scanner. I put this in this year's budget in a weird spot because I was thinking about having it done out in the maintenance building, so I put it in there. But it's a nice thing about having the explanations in the budget. I know it's odd and it extends the budget a little bit, but it's nice because you can reference back to it. But I figured a few $1,000s, right? I wasn't sure exactly what it was, but I figured it'd come in under $5,000. We were looking at them. We can buy like on Amazon or on a site just a scanner, a larger scanner for $3,000 to $4,000 right in there. But it was pointed out by the staff that our main copier printer that we have here for the office, we have fairly regular work on because something's going wrong, something's breaking, something's wearing out on it because we use it a decent amount. It would be difficult to be fixing ourselves and whatnot. So is there some sort of maintenance plan, that type of thing? So we looked into office machines companies, the one we had to do that, come out and service it and that type of thing, into that company as well. They didn't have just a scanner, but they had two different types of scanner printers that had different sizes. They were a decent amount more. There's a quality question in there too. We have that with automatic door openers too, right? You have to gauge that. So one came in at just over $7,000, and one came in a little over $10,000. Steve looked at them and he said the $7,000 one actually fits our needs better anyways. And then it includes the option for printing, right? Which we could send out to somewhere and have like ship prints to us, but then we would just have that capacity in-house for larger printings if we need them for planning commission stuff and things like that as well. So that's what's in here. And since it's over $5,000, right, it would require a board vote. And so that's what we're looking at as part of the ongoing process of digitization and doing this type of stuff in-house. It's obviously not going to get done quickly, right? We're not completing it in my term, right? I have a year left. It's highly unlikely that would happen, but over the next few years, a lot of stuff can slowly start getting digitized. And we make a lot of progress. There's hundreds of documents up on the website available publicly already, that type of thing. So decent amount of progress, but this is just part of it. Next, we have our discussion items. The first one is wall murals. It was brought up, right? We had the inside of the township painted as part of the remodel of if we wanted something on the walls in the office, we could potentially have like a local artist design, make something. So it's just kind of a discussion around that. and people are already looking at hanging up some of the historical photographs from the township and that type of thing. We could just go in that direction. There could be a mix. So it's just a discussion on that. Next, we have the Parks and Recreation Committee, and I wanted to check with the lawyer on this one to make sure we weren't forming a committee that was doing something that they didn't have the legal authority to do, or that we were forming it in not a legal fashion. And so we can just establish a Parks and Recreation Committee with board vote or resolution, which would establish it as an advisory board. The board can give that board power if they want, but it essentially works as an advisory board since they're not elected positions. Technically, you can have Parks and Rec elected, but I don't see why that would make sense. It seems like it would just make the system clunkier. And some version of a Parks and Recreation Committee has existed multiple times in the township past and then been discontinued, right? So it's kind of a recurring theme to a certain extent. So discussion on that. Next, we have the community center, and we've had this for discussion for a little bit here. I got some very preliminary numbers. So for like a 3,000-foot building with a little bit of office space, kitchenette, bathroom, those types of things, a pole barn type of construction with a backup generator, right? So some of those things, and it's listed in here. I got very general numbers from D.L. Morris. So 3,000 feet would approach $500,000, be right about there. If we want to pursue something in that direction, there's multiple ways to do it. I think it would make sense to have some sort of petition to show support. The thing is, it's very hard to get a petition that would show a decent amount of support if you're thinking about the entire township, right? Which is 9,530 people by the last census number that I had. And so if we round up the 10,000, even, 10%, which doesn't seem like a huge number as far as percentages goes, it's 1,000 people. It's insane. So 5% is 500. Number of hundreds of people doing a petition for a community center shows a decent amount of support. The other option would be some sort of election for a millage to fund a community center. Would obviously show public support. I highly doubt that would pass, but it's kind of a fool's errand to predict votes as well. So it is possible, but just discussion around that, what the board wants to do. Next, we have the budget meetings. And so one is a discussion over what meetings we want to have around the budget. And I'll have it as a discussion item in the regular meetings over the next few months. We have the annual meeting in March, and we'll have a vote on that in the next meeting. It's a discussion item in here as well. But we have the annual meeting in March, and we'll vote on the budget there, and then the budget year starts on April 1st. And so we obviously, that February, March period, we want to be pretty budget focused, and it depends on how deep we want to go. We would just kind of want to have mostly discussions in the regular meetings, specifically around the budget. I proposed in here that we have at least one separate work session in February, which gives us some time to still discuss it and adjust things through March to go just line by line through the budget, which I'll write in like I did last year, because I think that's a nice reference, and the document becomes more self-explanatory. And then if anyone wants to discuss the budget itself in this, so I'll get to the reference packet in a minute, a few important things in there too. Next, we have the fire department hiring panel. And so this is part of that millage that passed in August of adding full-time firefighters. So that tax, the 0.85 mils, is on this winter tax. And so the new firefighters will start in April. And it essentially is going over the process in here. We're going to have another fire chief. The White Lake Fire Chief is going to coordinate the hiring panel. We're going to have the Muskegon Charter Fire Chief will be on there. Another firefighter will be on there. And then we want one of the board members. I'm thinking one of the two new trustees. Their personal backgrounds make themselves good candidates, I think, for that position. And then also Lee Nova already on the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals, respectively. So I'm thinking Scott and Michael, but it depends on who's interested in it too. So if we have multiple people, then they can talk to Alan afterwards, and he can choose. And we'll have a 3-person panel run by another fire chief, right? So that 4-person group running this hiring process, which will involve a test, right, like an exam. cognitive scenarios that they'll run through, and then also an interview, and there'll be a scoring system. And so those candidates will go through that in January and February, and then in March we'll be bringing those as a proposal, and the board will vote on hiring offers going into the new budget year. So that's the basic plan. Next, we have the annual meeting date. And so this is just establishing the annual meeting. And there's two meetings that normally go with that, right? It's the normal process here. One is the annual meeting of the electors, which a lot of places don't do anymore. I think it's a good thing to have in place. It wasn't quite being done correctly before, but we sorted that out over the last few years. And so it's specifically designed to limit the raise that the elected officials can give themselves. Right? We had a little raise for the three main electeds, over the last couple of years, 2 years ago. We had a decent raise for the trustees. I'll propose a raise for the supervisor, clerk, and treasurer this year. And then if people show up to the annual meeting of the electors, they get to vote on those raises. And that's it. They don't get to vote on the whole budget. That was what was being done improperly before, right? And so, which dangerous, right? You could bankrupt the township in one meeting there. So I think it's good that changed, but I think it's also good to have it in place where the people can override the salaries for the elected officials. And so if people disagree, right, with the electeds getting raises, they show up to the meeting, they can vote to keep the salaries the same, right? So that's what that meeting's for. And then after that, we'll have the budget meeting where the board votes on approving the budget going into April. And so just want to establish that date. Normally it's done on a Saturday, traditionally in Dalton Township, with the idea that if more people want to make it, they can. So I see no reason to discontinue that. Might as well keep that going. And then one week buffer in there in case, and hopefully there's not, I don't think there's going to be, but if there was some sort of major disagreement among the board and it couldn't come to some sort of resolution and majority vote on passing a budget, and at least gives us a week to do some sort of emergency special meeting to get it approved. So we go into April with the new year. So just a little bit of buffer there. Not planning any problems, just planning for a contingency in case there are. So there's a discussion of setting up that date, which we'll have for a vote in January, along with those salary resolutions. So bunch of stuff planned in the January meeting too. Next, we have the staff Christmas party. And so this was just brought up in the office here yesterday among some of the staff. But what are we doing for that? We haven't particularly planned for it. What we've done in the past is had an event here, which is just kind of a potluck, where staff comes and usually the board is invited. We can't talk about township stuff at that meeting because we'll have a quorum. That would be an illegal meeting, right? So, but they can come as long as we don't discuss township decisions and things like that. Eat some food, do some sort of gift exchange. But there's a variety of opinions and thoughts on it. One thought was that we could have it instead of during office hours, we have it outside of office hours and outside of the office. There's a little bit of a getaway. There's a law, and I don't know the specifics on that, but I don't think the township could pay for that. Christy and Tracy brought that up, so staff would have to pay for themselves. Or some places I know shut down for a couple hours on a certain day, a little bit before Christmas, like the 21st probably makes sense. And so we could do something like that. We could invite the planning commission and zoning board of appeals as well, along with the board. And so just kind of looking at the options of how we want to run that when it's more of an internal thing. But so we bring it for discussion. So we'll see people's thoughts on that. And that brings us up to our final public comments. So, and we'll look at the reference packet real quick here. There's a few things in here. And it's big. It's a little bigger than the normal board packet. It would have been a lot bigger. Big difference if I included that contract, but I want everyone, all the board members, to have a copy of that. I print a copy of the regular board packet for all the board members. I don't print a copy of the reference packet, but obviously it's posted online. Anyone can see it if they want. Someone specifically asked me for one, obviously I would print it. But first of all, we have the audit reports. And the board gets this. This comes from the audit agency, right, which is briefly DeLong. And Eric would be here for the presentation to explain what some of this means. And so the board gets this, right? It's in the board boxes right now, the trustee boxes to pick up along with the packets. And so that's what we did. But I just included the same thing, also at PDF. So I just print those and scan those in. And so that same audit report is in here. That's the beginning item in here so anyone can see the audit. Next, we have lake water quality reports. And so this is on the lakes that are treated by PLM, which is North Lake, Middle Lake, West Lake, and Twin Lake. And so it just goes through the water quality reports from the testing and sampling. Next, we have a budget report. And what I've included on this budget are 3 line items. One is the original budget numbers going into this year. 2 is the amended numbers up to this point. And then 3 is the actual activity up to this point. So anyone can look it over, the board can look it over and see what they think. If there's any special items that they're kind of focused on, thinking about foreseeing for next year and that type of thing. And then finally, there's the Michigan Public Policy Survey Report. And I get these, I don't think I've included any of them before. It's something done for it's a center, a study center at the University of Michigan. And they send out surveys to local government officials. And they're kind of interesting. I've responded to some of them, not all of them. So what's it say here? It's the University of Michigan Center for Local, State, and Urban Policy. And this one I thought was interesting. It's useful, as a reference. That's why it's in the reference packet. And it's Michigan Local Government Leaders Assessments of Democratic Functioning Improved from 2021 Low, but First Signs of Trouble at Local Level Emerge. And so it's what the local government officials think of how the government is functioning at the national level, the state level, and the local levels. And so it's pretty interesting reading because it's not super positive, which is interesting, but there's a big difference between the locals grading themselves too. So just interesting information I wanted to include. So that's the reference packet, that's the regular packet, and then other thing is the audit, which is in the reference packet as well. So if anyone has any thoughts, ideas, questions, comments, concerns, feel free to reach out. You can always call me. My direct line is area code 231-332-6700 or email supervisor@daltontownship.org or come to the meeting, do public comments. First public comment, I ask that people stay on time, right? 3 minutes, stay on topic. So something that's on the agenda itself. The second one, more flexible. If you want to talk about something else, then feel free. And I do have separate sessions if people want to have a more in-depth discussion about complaints or issues or whatever it may be. And so the next one, there's a notice on the website. It's set up for December 23rd. I'm kind of playing with the Seinfeld joke around Festivus is the holiday for the rest of us. So otherwise, Jeff signing off until next time or until the meeting.